Hello, I'm Rob,
And I'm Rob.
and welcome to Press X. And today, because it's October, we're going to be doing a few weeks of horror stuff. And on this first edition of horror stuff, we're talking about the zombie games. Specifically, what makes a good zombie game.
Yeah, this is the thing that's always bugged me. When you look at zombies in other media, they're actually a threat. But in video games, the first thing that I want to talk about is the bite, right? The whole idea is if you get bitten by a zombie, you turn into a
Yeah.
zombie. But that doesn't seem to happen in video games. It happens in everything else.
Yeah, it's weird because if it had one bite done, you're talking a roguelike there. You're talking something that'd make Dark Souls look very, very easy because one bite and you're done. So in this, I don't know whether it's a hypothetical game we're talking about, or whether it's an actual literal game we're talking about. We're talking about something pretty hardcore there. If we're going to install a if you're bitten, you're dead trope of zombie fiction, zombie movies, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. See, for me, that would add a. Right, do you remember a game called One Single Life?
No.
Right. One Single Life was an interesting game because you only had one life, that was it. And for me, a zombie game would be far more interesting. I don't mind your games like Dead Rising where it's basically chop till you drop or wherever they call it. But I would love to see a zombie game where the bite was actually a real threat. So it didn't matter whether you were a player or an NPC or something like that. You basically got infected. Now, Zombie U on the Nintendo Wii U, that actually did play around with that whole idea a little bit. But I'd love it if they actually did the bite as a serious threat because it had an element of strategy. You could have elements of stealth in your zombie game because you're trying to avoid getting bitten for a start. You'd have to be more careful.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that, but at the same time, survival games, and the games that you play for fun,
Yeah,
and you've got to strike the balance there. I think the bite can be a presence, but I think if you're going to make it sort of part of a game to make the game fun and people want to play it, it has to be a presence which you can react to. So, say it's a roguelike game and you got to just go out exploring. Let's say Daisy or whatever the other one's called, and you get bitten. And as soon as you get bitten, you have a clock come up on the screen, which is a countdown how long it's going to take before your character is dead as a dodo. Because there's very few zombie movies in which you are bitten and you instantly turn into a zombie. There's a phase there. I think the closest to be instant was Train to Busan. But other than that, there's like a phase there that you got to go through. So a clock comes up on screen and it says, I don't know, 3 hours. You got 3 hours to find either a some medicine, which is I think what Dead Rising did. Dead Rising 2, or just to chop that limb off.
I love that idea. I love the
And
whole idea.
it'd keep it alive. It'd keep that sort of concept. It'd keep the traditional zombie thing alive, but it'd also install the power of the bite.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the actual limb removal. Weirdly enough, right? And there's a reason why. It's because it depends on the limb, right? If you got bitten on the arm and you decide to cut your arm off, then you're basically one armed, and so you have other mechanics that come into play. You're not going to be as effective in combat, so you're going to have to use more stealth mechanics, things like that. You're going to have to be far more
Yeah.
careful. And if it's a leg that gets bitten, do you really want to lose a leg? So you're going to be desperate to find medication or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you bit in the head, if you bit in the head or you bit in the torso, you're boned.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And I love the idea of including the limb removal in that, the medication and the limb removal. I think are great ideas. They'd add urgency to the game because you could be in the middle of something, but then you get bit, and then it's a desperate rush to find medication or remove the limb.
At the same time, that's a hypothetical
Yeah,
situation. I mean, somebody might make that game, and I genuinely hope to do because it'd make the zombie game a bit more lively. Pun very much intended. But what about actual real games? Like, what is a good example of a real zombie game?
Well, this is the thing. Good zombie games. I liked some of the Resident Evil games that they had out on the PlayStation 2. Resident Evil Outbreak, for example, started playing around with certain ideas, which I found really interesting. What is it? Because you have games like Left 4 Dead and stuff like that. But Resident Evil Outbreak was playing around with a bunch of ideas that never really left Resident Evil Outbreak. And I always thought that was a shame because those games were a lot more interesting than a lot of people found. Because you had multiple characters for a start, so you had multiple points of view. And I think that's one of the things that is always overlooked with these games. You have one single protagonist, and that's it. But a zombie outbreak doesn't affect just one person.
Yeah, the problem I have with Resident Evil is it's kind of the same problem I have with Walking Dead, in the sense of, I mean, initially zombies were very much a big deal with Resident Evil, but I think it was number 4. As beloved as a game as that is,
Yeah.
there weren't zombies anymore. What was it? It was like this thing where the mouth, like a plant thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, they basically became mutated and became something else. And
And beyond that, they became such a secondary feature. It became about bad humans doing weird, godlike plots than it did about the actual zombies, which the game made its name on.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you touched on right there. Actual undead, actually including proper dyed-in-the-wool zombies. See, this is the thing that I've always wondered about this, right? If by their nature zombies are humans who've died and been reanimated, that means their cells have somehow reawakened and mutated and something like that, yeah?
Well, the idea behind it is people have, let's say, fingernails continue to grow and hair continues to grow so much after your body dies. So there's like a very base amount of electrical signals going around your brain. And the only electrical signal that's going around the brain is to feed. And that's the idea of zombies. The Romero zombie, not the voodoo zombie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very, very base level electrical signals going on the brain that causes it to eat things and want to eat things.
Yeah. And that that I don't mind. I can accept that. It makes a certain degree of logical sense. Okay, it's still Stan Lee science, as we call it in the comic book world, but it makes a certain amount of logical sense, right?
It was all a vehicle for allegory, wasn't it, at the beginning?
Yes, it was. What I don't understand is this whole concept of the zombies suddenly going for the Olympic gold medal in the 100 meters. Since when was it a thing that zombies could sprint faster than a human with their wasted muscles and atrophied limbs and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's older than people think. I mean, people think that 28 days later, bore that sort of thing. 1985 film Return of the Living Dead, it had fast zombies before that.
Yeah.
I think there was an Italian one, I can't remember the name, or a Spanish one, Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, I think might have them, but it's not a new idea. It's just zombies have become so everywhere and everything.
Yeah.
I think that fast zombies were a necessary evil to keep that genre alive, but at the same time, it changes the dynamic, doesn't it? From here is a crowd of, let's say, 10 zombies, and that's bad, but as long as I don't do anything stupid, I won't snuff it.
Yeah.
To that sort of, it's a different type of fear, isn't it? Whereas with one fast zombie, it becomes the scariest thing in the world.
See, that's the thing. Okay, I can accept. Right. Do you remember I Am a Hero?
Yeah. Right. 2017 Japanese zombie movie.
Yeah, it was based on the manga I Am a Hero. But I loved the idea of the zombies, of the undead, in that how they kept repeating the actions that they were most used to. So you had that zombie who was an athlete, he was a high jumper, and yet his head had flattened because he kept landing on his head. As a zombie, he kept doing the high jump repeatedly.
Yeah.
And that's something that might be interesting to include in a game, because one of the things that I thought was interesting about that particular idea was that when you're playing a zombie game, all you hear are and that sort of noise, and it's a common zombie noise. Everybody knows it, right? But,
yeah, like the shuffling of pants and breaking of glass, this sort of thing.
Shuffling of pants? Do you mean feet?
Pants rubbing together.
Oh, right, okay. But anyway, I thought it was interesting because that's a mechanic that could fool a player into thinking there's somebody actually alive or somebody needs help. So, because at the end of the day, they had in that movie and in the manga, they had it so that vocal cords were still working. So, there was that scene where that woman was desperate, where that undead woman was desperate to go into the shop because she loved shopping, and so she kept yanking at the door of the shop, which never opened, and that's all she did.
Okay, so I guess we're going back to hypothetical games.
Yeah,
Yeah, because literal ones, I honestly can't count many zombie games that have done it well. I'd say as a Dynasty Warriors style romp, Dead Rising works as a Dynasty Warriors
yeah.
style game.
It's chop till you drop. I mean, it's just there for pure arcade fun. That's it.
Resident Evil 2, sorry, that's again the zombies are kind of secondary. It's kind of Resident Evil, classic Resident Evil. There's good zombies in there, but it's secondary towards the plot.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
Left 4 Dead was interesting because of the mechanic, of the main mechanic that you had, that it was multiplayer and people had to rely on each other.
well, it was basically co-op hard mode, wasn't it? You could take
Yeah.
out the zombies and replace them with anything else, and it wouldn't have too major of an effect.
Exactly, and this is one of the reasons why the whole running zombie annoys me quite a lot. The remake of Resident Evil, the original, you remember the GameCube remake of Resident Evil? That one was interesting because it was basically the Resident Evil game, but then it added that whole idea that you had to get rid of the zombie properly. You couldn't just shoot it in the head and leave it.
That returns to Return of the Living Dead, the Dan O'Bannon movie of how would you kill something which is already dead, and the answer that movie gave is you can't kill it.
Yeah, and that I actually agree with. And that is something, again, which would make an interesting mechanic in a game. See, my idea of a zombie game is something where it is a lot more challenging than what you currently have, because if you want to replicate survival in a zombie world, then it's not going to be easy. Yes, you can craft weapons out of anything. Yes, you can chop their heads off and chop the limbs off and stuff like that. That's all well and good. But, you can't be a berserker in a zombie world because you'll basically die. You have to be careful. You have to plan your approach. You have to be ready. Basic things like fashioning. See, one of the things that really annoys me about all of these zombie games is that none of them actually, every single one has, yes, you can craft as many weapons as you want, but none of them say, well, maybe you need some kind of defensive products, maybe you need to protect your arms and your legs or your neck and your shoulders from zombie bites.
Yeah, I mean, personally, if we're going to sort of throw around sort of examples, it'd be sort of Minecraft meets Don't Starve with a little bit of Resident Evil in there.
A little bit. Well, you had some interesting crafting ideas in the Dead Rising games for making weapons.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I'm talking about here is it's a game where you are given a area to survive in,
Yeah.
and you've got to make your own place. You've got to defend yourself. You've got to go out and salvage stuff. It's what a zombie cut. I mean, basically, Fallout is a zombie game in concept.
Yeah, I mean, there are zombie games. Weirdly enough, there are.
I mean, Fallout 4 is a zombie game in the sense of Fallout 4. You've got to make your own place to stay. It kind of got a bit lost in the mix, but that sort of idea where you wake up in a zombie apocalypse and you've got to survive by making your own base, by salvaging, by going out to get stuff, which involves going out and fighting zombies and interacting with the world that way.
I mean, there are games now where, and I think some of them are available on mobile platforms as well. There are games now where you basically have to go out exploring and gathering food, gathering resources, and you have kind of a base of operations. You have your home base, which you can build and reinforce to protect you overnight from potential incursions from zombies. You can gather other survivors to join your little thing, and you can basically expand your camp that sort of way. And there are games like that now, but even they focus on things like weapon crafting and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay.
The thing about weapon crafting is it tends to be guns.
Yeah, it tends to be guns.
And the problem with guns in a zombie scenario is you run out of ammo. So what you would need is a really big, sturdy stick.
Yeah, a big sturdy stick. See, You know, in the Roman Colosseum, they used to have that stick with like a kind of horseshoe thing on the end that they used to grab the slaves and herd them with, right? I think there's
Oh
still
yeah,
right, and there's still. I think it's like a farming thing now for cattle or sheep or something like that. They use it now, like a shepherd's crook type thing, right? That is an amazing weapon in a zombie world because it's long for a start, so everything happens at the other end of the stick, right? It's easy to use. You can basically push a zombie back, create space for yourself, and keep moving. Especially if you're in a
yeah.
world where zombies don't run.
I think the problem with zombie games, one of the big problems with zombie games, is the fact that it's so incredibly tied to the modern day.
Yeah,
Because guns, it has to have guns. These games absolutely have to have guns. And I think a zombie game would be immeasurably better if it was set in an era where guns aren't a factor.
well, this is the thing.
Because it'd take that crutch away.
See, I don't think you need to set it in an era where guns aren't a factor. I just think you need to use your common sense and say, okay, how many people are going to have access to an M16 assault rifle in the UK?
Yeah, about 12 people.
That's what I mean. And so you use your common sense. If there's a zombie apocalypse in one of the European countries, or, I mean, most of these zombie apocalypses tend to happen in America because, obviously, but they don't set them anywhere else. And there's a reason for that. It's because guns are easy to use and they're readily available in America. But if you set it in any other country of the world, it's a completely different ballgame because you're not going to have access to guns automatically. You're going to have to use whatever the other weapons you can find. I would recommend cleavers because they are very good. They have weight and purpose. You're not going to have access to samurai swords or anything like that. You're going to have to be creative. And that's one of the things that I think is really missing from the whole zombie survival thing, is that creativity. Human ingenuity knows no bounds, and nothing breeds ingenuity better than adversity.
The thing that we're talking about here is the zombie, like as in movies, in video games, it's kind of become a weak crutch.
Yeah.
In the sense of, here is a anonymous, faceless horde. Just do whatever you want. We don't really care. We're not going to design it in any way. It's just kill them. Kill them good.
Kill them or avoid them.
Whereas, and the thing about zombies is, as they were conceived anyway, they're such an all-purpose monster. You can have this thing that can mean anything. It can do anything. It can be anywhere. So to do that, you have to have a game that sort of reflects the world and the way they change it.
Yeah. I mean, you had some games where they tried to play around with the whole idea of a zombie. What was it? What was that Suda 51 one? Something Chainsaw.
Not Lollipop.
Yeah, that one where they tried to do like punk rock zombies and stuff like that, which I never really was a fan of that. But then you had other games like the magnificent Stubbs the Zombie on the Xbox. Stubbs was great because it basically took the zombie apocalypse but turned it on its head and said, okay, you're the zombie now, so it's up to you to start your own zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, that's like Plague Inc., isn't it? But zombie era.
Well, it was interesting because Stubbs could basically remove organs and throw them as grenades, or detach his hand and his hand would crawl around like, thing from the Addams Family, and then attach itself to people's heads and start controlling them that way.
The fundamental essence of what we're trying to say in this video, right, is that creativity needs to be put back into this subgenre of horror.
Yes.
Because there's so many ways you can tackle this creature. It's actually terrifying how varied and interesting the concepts you can do with this thing are.
And it's actually scary and terrifying how underused this creature is.
How underused and overused. It's so overused, but nobody's doing anything creative with it.
Yeah.
So it's basically like a blank piece of paper to an artist.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want with that piece of paper, create whatever you want, and all they keep on doing is drawing stickmen.
Yeah. That's literally it. That is literally it. It's just cut and paste zombies all over the place these days. And frankly, I'm tired of it.
Daisy and the other one have kind of the right idea, but they haven't put like a lot of the ideas and thought and concepts into it.
Yeah. One thing that I do want to mention, just to close this off, right? in the event of a zombie apocalypse, there are two things that you would need to be scared of, right? The first is the zombies and whatever infection is causing the zombies or whatever virus is causing the zombies in the first place. The second thing is other people, other survivors, because they would be far worse than the zombies. And there aren't that many games that Dead Rising did an interesting idea with the psychopaths and everything like that, but there aren't many games where they basically have like rival clans and rival groups and stuff like that, and they do a good job of showing how moral degeneration happens in the event of a zombie apocalypse, but it starts a lot earlier than that. One of the things that I would love to see, one type of game that I would love to see is the beginning of a zombie outbreak. That whole push for survival at the beginning when it first starts, because it's always at the end or in the middle of it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. The problem is, I think they put too much, in films, they put way too much credit and too much value on humans being the real monsters.
Yeah, but they don't really do that in games. It's kind of at a distance. It's never close to home. You never kind of have an NPC who you make friends with, or you never have a multiplayer zombie game where you might be in with a group, but that some certain members of that group might betray you. They might have a mission that involves betraying their group. See, that whole aspect of it, I just think if you want to add realism to a game, then do it properly.
Yeah, so that's our hypothetical zombie game. Somewhere in all of those things that we've been talking about,
Yes.
is a hypothetical and great zombie game. We've been Press X. If you got anything to comment below to add to this conversation, please do click like, subscribe. But until next time, thanks for watching.